properly raised, 16-year-old young women to Vegas, how many would you get back fundamentally unscathed? I say 95, right? You might say, where do you get this stuff? Here's my thinking. 16-year-old woman has the same level of maturity roughly as what would you say, 32-year-old male? Yeah. Right? Roughly the same level of maturity. We have sent 132-year-old males to Vegas at exactly 95 back, so we know the loss ratio on this level of maturity, right? But what the truth is we are not willing to let our daughter be one of the 5%. So what we say to our daughter is, you're right, sweetie, it's extremely likely you'd be okay, and you definitely can take care of yourself. However, there's a small chance circumstances would arise for which your minimum experience on the planet has prepared you, and we care about you too much to take that small chance. Right? And now, it's very, they can argue, but it's harder, because I'm not trying to prove you can't take care of yourself. Right? And it's going to be a better argument to make. So, when I tell these stories, I feel like I'm coming across as some sort of parent who knows what they're doing. And that couldn't be further from the truth, right? Because it's easy. It's like, I don't know which boxer said it, but it's like, everything's easy until you get punched in the mouth, right? So at home, I got my clever little schemes, and the boys are attacking. And sometimes I'm just tired. And my oldest son, when he was 8, he came downstairs. We were going out in public, and he came downstairs without his shirt on. And I don't usually call him dude, but I thought since his shirt was off, I'm like, dude, where is your shirt? And he said, I don't have to wear a shirt. And I'm like, no. Our family wears shirts when we go out in public. That's what we do. And he said, why? And I was tired. Here's what I came up with. Only criminals go out in public. So, of course, within a week, we're driving around, he's like, look, they had 2 crooks, So they don't have their shirt on, and then he just keeps going. Why don't they just arrest people when they're not wearing their shirts? I'm like, well, they could, but there's constitutional rights and stuff like that. So, the point of that is I didn't want you to think I was perfect at this, by any stretch of the imagination. But the weird thing is, we're better at work than we are at home, aren't we? You say things to your kids and your spouse you'd never say to people at work, right? So trying to convince us to use the charm that we use at work at home as well. So I was telling my wife the story of the teenage daughter about the time our first child was born. She looks at me with great shock and says, you're right. Like, well, of course I'm right. I'm a trained professional. Didn't I make this stuff up? She says, no, when I was 16, I wanted to go to a concert in another city, and my father said I couldn't go. And he said, because I said so I left the note, went to the concert, punished me when I get home. And then she's telling the story 20 years later, and she turns red and says, I only went because I said so. Right? So the way that we try to influence, right, actually ends up causing people not to do what we want to do. And the reality is, right, if influence, right, is where we use our confidence and commitment, we're trying to earn people's respect, trust, and admiration. Because the teenagers, like people who work with you and work around you and the organization you need to help, we're not near them most of the time. Right? So the goal of the teenager is you behave when I'm not watching you, and people around the university, you're doing what I need you to do when I'm not watching you, so I earn the trust, admiration, and respect. And the point is, we're influencing all the time. Right? Not at the ask, we're influencing all along. So I was working for a big energy company in Houston. They called me up afterwards, and they said, well, you worked us up into a big lather, but we forgot to ask you, what happens if your influence plan doesn't work? And I said, that's because it always works, right? And they're like, no, really? I said, no, it really, I'm not kidding around. Think about this. In Oklahoma State, we have our big football rival is OU. And 9 out of 10 times, we lose that football game. Sad. Some of you may be in that position, or you may be on the happier side. But there's only one reason we lose. Only one reason. And that is the game ends at a certain time. And usually at that time, we're behind. Right? That's what the problem is. But in the game of influence never ends. Right? Influence never ends. So if someone doesn't do what you want them to do today, right, you have not accumulated enough respect, trust, and admiration yet. Right? Because when your friend asked you for a ride to the airport, you didn't ask him why, you just did it. Right? I don't know if your organizations, we do this scam at Oklahoma State, and it's just a full-on scam. When you've got 10 or 12 people working for somebody and the leader retires or gets promoted, they ask the 12 people, hey, anyone interested in being promoted, tell us and we'll give you an interview. What's that interview? It's a total scam, right? You've been working there for 8 years. What are you going to say in 20 minutes that's going to change our mind about who's getting promoted? Right? Yeah, hire me and I'll start coming to work on time, I'll pay attention and get along with people and do a good job, right? I mean, what else can you say, right? They've decided because you're influencing every single day, right? With every single interaction. So we're going to get away from the idea of presenting things and talking people into things, and we think about every day. Start running your emails through a filter. Does this email increase the trust, admiration, and respect in the people who get it? Right? If I have a conversation with someone, right, is it going to increase their trust, admiration, and respect for me? Because if you think about it, sometimes when we don't get our way, even if we look disappointed, it cashes in trust, admiration, and respect, right? People don't like to disappoint people. So if I feel like I've disappointed you, I kind of duck you a little bit, and I don't want to try something else because I don't want to disappoint you again. So you notice when things don't go our way, we smile, right? And we think, right? And then you can actually get more trust, admiration, and respect by having a cool head and being positive in difficult circumstances. So I had to tell the story I just told you at Tinker Air Force Base, big Air Force Base in Oklahoma, about 40 times over a 2-year period. And I got to tell you, it's an authority-oriented group of people. They were not as open as you seemingly are to what they call this mamby-pamby influence stuff, right? They believe you have to have authority. And what we know from research is people who grow up in a family that has a high degree of authority believe the opposite of authority is weakness, chaos, or rebellion, right? That you need to have control, otherwise no one will do. But we kind of just agreed if you use authority, people want to open the door, right? And if you use they want to open the door even though you want to keep it closed. And if you use influence, they're more likely to keep the door closed. So I had to think of how do you explain to the people at Tinker Air Force Base. And what I try to do by telling these stories is instead of, sometimes I get hired by companies that are like, tell them this, tell them that. And I'm like, why don't you tell them? They're going to pay a bunch of money for me to come in there, right? The skill that all of us are involved in is who can tell it in such a way that it gets into our belief system, right? Because we go out the next day and act out our beliefs. So the reason I make some of the stories go on is because what I'm trying to do to a group of people is really penetrate that. And if you do a good presentation, it's like a good movie. The question is, how long does that story bug you? Right? So next time you're at work and you're like, wait a minute. And it actually becomes part of how we behave. So it's kind of like a pep rally. So at Tinker, right, I said we're going to change it from 16-year-old daughters to 16-year-old sons, and we're going to have authority dad and influence dad. Think about this. Both dads tell their son, be home at 11 p.m. Both sons pop in 30 minutes late. Let's climb inside authority dad's head. What's really bugging authority dad? His son's 30 minutes late, or he violated a direct order. Yes, and that's not why we make people managers, because you get the joy of ordering people around, right? We make you the manager to try to get things done on time and do a good job and so forth. What's inside influence dad's head? Oh my goodness, little Bo Ron is 16 and he's still not trained yet, right? And he's going to have to think of how we're going to influence our son. So authority dad says, you're 30 minutes late, you're grounded for 2 weeks. But dad, what does authority dad say? No buts. Yeah, no buts. And I tell this at Tinker and I get people fist pumping, like, yeah, tell that little kid what to do, right? They're very enthusiastic about this parenting technique. So authority son is off to his room for his 2-week grounding. Then influence dad says, son, my watch says 11:30. Always give the benefit of the doubt. Is something wrong with my watch? Or is there some sort of daylight savings time I'm unaware of, and in fact, you are 30 minutes early? No, Dad. Blah, 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 cell phone battery, blah, blah, blah. And what you say is, well, as you know, because we've been talking about